Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm and you are watching 6th part of What If Naruto Was Betrayed and Destroyed the Akatsuki. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Everything fell silent for a minute. Then it screamed into existence, like a thunderclap. Everyone was startled awake when a portal began to form inside Yamamoto's home, screeching and howling into the night. The Gote 13's head captain and commander continued sipping his tea as if this miniature hurricane were nothing, unable to see, but his sixth sense could detect a significant change in the air and commented. It appears that Naruto has passed his second test. Yamamoto ignored the fierce wind whipping at his long beard, gazing into the abyss and faintly detecting two chakra signatures. So it would appear, Shunsui replied, stretching his arms out and yawning loudly. The wind flipped Daisuke's chair over, jolting him awake. Was that? He grumbled, snorting, before being knocked over again by Hinata and Yugito, who burst into the room. Both women stared at the wildly fluctuating dimensional rip, oblivious to their companion's anguish. The Hyuga heiress in the Nibi container had only just fallen asleep after spending the majority of the night talking. Is it Naruto-kun? Murmured the Hyuga heiress, peering into the hole with her Byakugan and seeing nothing. If it's him, he sure knows how to make an entrance, Yugito remarked, her arms crossed in front of her chest, as the vortex shifted violently and tossed everyone's hair around. Everyone was waiting with bated breath as something began to emerge. Hinata wrung her hands nervously, the tension killing her. Naruto-kun, please be okay. Yoruichi was the first to emerge in all of her naked glory, and when she stepped into the room, everyone's breath seemed to hitch in their throats at the same time. When Hinata and Yugito saw her in this natural state, their killing intent increased, as the two young women formed an instant bond. Yoruichi was their common enemy after hearing about Naruto's second trial and who and what it entailed from Yamamoto earlier. As a result, when the beautiful goddess appeared, Yoruichi was met with two vicious glares and a massive combined killer intent, as both Hinata and Yugito took up battle stances. Who are you? Yugito hissed, reaching for her kunai holster. The Neko woman raised her hands pleadingly and arched a violet brow. Don't worry, girls, I don't bite. Well, not always. Yoruichi noticed Shunsui and smiled at her old friend. Has it been a while, Shun-kun? The man in the straw hat could only nod, unable to take his gaze away from Yoruichi, before finally stammering. Hello, you're looking Well, Yoru-chan. After seeing Shunsui's reaction to Yoruichi, Hinata and Yugito's eyes narrowed even more, and their killing intent increased even more. Yamamoto, sensing this, quickly changed the subject, as the Jinchuriki had yet to appear. Where is Naruto Yoruichi, the young Naruto? As a voice rang out, the woman turned to face the portal. I'll be right there. Seconds later, Naruto emerged from the shimmering. Naruto's gaze moved slowly around the room, first to Shunsui, then to Yugito. Before finally falling upon Hinata, who had instantly relaxed her stance, forgetting all about Yoruichi the moment she saw Naruto and walked up to him seconds later to embrace and place a loving kiss on his lips. After a minute, she reluctantly stepped back and stared at Yoruichi before asking in a hard-edged tone that drew Naruto's attention. Who is she, Naru-kun? Yamamoto said, Yoruichi Shiwan, to which the Neko rolled her eyes as he launched into an elaborate explanation of her being a princess. I left that life, you old coot, former princess. As a certain female Jinchuriki shot a heated glare at Yoruichi before she asked, the elderly man let his words fade. So, what exactly is she doing here, and, more importantly, why is she naked? The Nibi container regarded the dark-tanned woman with suspicion, as if she were a threat. Easy Yugito-chan, Yoruichi is going to accompany us, and the reason she is naked is Well. We kind of destroyed our clothing during the trial, but she could at least put something on now. Naruto hesitantly stated, silently praying that he would not have to explain his trial and what had almost happened to Hinata and Yugito. Unfortunately, Yoruichi could sense Naruto's discomfort and was still irritated that he had resisted her and stated in a wicked grin in a voice oozing with sex appeal, while mimicking Hinata's address of Naruto. I don't recall you complaining about our nakedness during the trial, Naru-kun. A tick mark appeared on Yugito's forehead, and Hinata's face was filled with shock and pain before she bit it back and turned away. The Nibi vessel appeared to be prepared to kill Yoruichi, but it was stopped before anything could happen. Naruto noticed Hinata's brief expression of pain and reached out to her before a door opened with a small creak and everyone turned to look in that direction when a small voice called out. Naru-kun? A sleepy Neliel-2 Odelschwank stood in the doorway, blearily rubbing her eyes and clutching a stuffed teddy bear. Naruto appeared across the room, kneeling in front of his surrogate daughter. You shouldn't be up this late, little one. He then affectionately patted her head as she realized he was back and hugged him tightly. I'm not tired, yawn. Naruto sank even lower to pick her up. Come on, I'll take you back to bed. But it was too late now, because Nell had noticed Yoruichi and her young eyes sparkled with curiosity. She wriggled away from Naruto with incredible speed, and quickly approached the Neko woman. They just stared at each other for a moment before Nell raised her arms, clearly indicating that she wanted to be held, her lower lip jutting out in a pout, as Yoruichi exclaimed and took a step backwards. She's a true Arankar. Nell's face was puzzled by Yoruichi's reaction to her, before Naruto scooped her up into his arms from behind and shot a silent glare at the woman, letting her know he was not pleased with her reaction to the green-haired little girl. Yoruichi, realizing her error, strode over and bent down to tickle the little girl, eliciting a giggle from the child. Naruto then told Nell to kiss everyone goodnight before returning to the bedroom to put Arankar to bed once more. Akamaru stiffened, then yipped, jolting Kiba and Sakura awake, as that malevolent glint returned to Kiba's eyes. Did you catch his scent, boy? The dog barked as it stood up and took off running. Hey! This forced Kiba and Sakura to leap to their feet and chase after Akamaru, who was now outdistancing them. As they chased the canine, Sakura's mind went into overdrive. How would she react? What could she say to him that would stop him from attacking her right away? As he leapt after his dog, Kiba let out a triumphant cry. Got him! Exclaimed Kiba after hearing a crashing sound. When the Junin rounded the bend, Kiba's canine familiar had fallen into a deep camouflaged pit from which he couldn't escape, causing the canine to whimper piteously. One of Naruto's shirts lay on the ground, the source of his odor. Kiba growled and ripped the fabric with his clawed hands. What in the world is a trap doing out here? As the blonde Kunoichi thought to herself, Ino smirked as she withdrew from Akamaru and back into her body, which had been held by Sasuke lest she fall back out of the tree. You'll be slowed down. The blonde was quickly released by the Uchiha, who held a smoke bomb in one hand. He lobbed the smoke bomb with a sharp twist of his wrist, and it exploded between Sakura and Kiba, billowing purple smoke out around them, their coughs audible from the cloud. And this will give us an advantage. Sasuke and Ino dashed to the ground, passing through the cloud of smoke, each landing a brutal blow on Kiba and Sakura, knocking them unconscious. Thus buying the two Anbu time to flee, and when the smoke cleared, they were gone, leaving Kiba and Sakura in the dark. As they jumped through the trees, Sasuke noticed Ino was silent before a question came to mind and he asked. Hey, why were you wearing one of Naruto's shirts? His response was a glare. Why do you think? Ino snapped, before her thoughts wandered to a remorseful memory. 2.5 years ago. You know, you're not alone. Naruto burst out laughing, causing Ino to cringe slightly as he responded. That line was given to me by Sakura a long time ago. When Naruto mentioned Sakura's name, Ino's eyes narrowed, and he realized he needed to change the subject and said, "Aren't you supposed to be looking after your flower shop?" A bouquet of red roses was thrust into his arms, and he did a double take when he saw the 3 words written on the card. "You're kidding me," Naruto stammered, his voice trembling. "I'm not Naruto-kun, I love you." Naruto's face became ashen as he tried to process what Ino had just said. After a few minutes of deafening silence, Ino had had enough. She spoke up, pleading. "Would you please say something?" Naruto hesitantly stammered over to the lovely blonde Kunoichi. "I don't know what to say, Ino. I've had 2 other people say that to me, and both times it crushed my heart. You've been a good friend to me since the wedding." Naruto shook his head to shake the memory away. I don't think I could have made it through the last 6 months without you. I admit I've grown close to you, even fond of you." Noticing how close he had gotten, he took a step back before saying hesitantly, "But, no matter how much I don't want to jeopardize our friendship by looking for something more, Ino." Her eyes welled up with tears, and her lower lip trembled. "But why? I want us to be more than friends, and it appears that you do as well." "Because, Ino, I'm afraid that if I let myself love you, something bad will happen to us." He stamped his foot and shook his head rapidly. "I don't think I can take that much pain any longer, Ino. Please, Naruto-kun, I understand you're afraid of loving someone because of what happened to you in the past." Naruto backed up as she took a step forward. "But please give me the opportunity to prove to you that I can be the one you can love and that I can love you back, as I already do." As Naruto listened to his friend's soft caring plea, his mind was racing with ideas of what to say or do. It didn't help when Ino crawled into his lap and rested her arms on his shoulders while he was thinking. Naruto looked up and took in the sight of the young blonde goddess in front of him. Ino was dressed in a smooth black leather tank top that hugged her upper torso tightly while also showing off her lean and bare midriff. Ino's voluptuous body was encased in tight black jeans that appeared to be painted on her. As they contrasted with her flawless alabaster skin, the clothes revealed all of Ino's sultry curves, giving her a look of sensuous beauty. Naruto couldn't help but blush as she moved so close to him, his back now pressed against the tree, her breath hot on his face. Naruto asked softly, looking deep into Ino's eyes. "Are you serious, Ino-chan? Do you truly love me?" "I meant every word, Naruto-kun, and I promise I'll never hurt you," she said softly before closing the gap and kissing him on the lips. As their kiss deepened, a gust of wind blew wildly, and his tongue slid sharply through her willingly parted mouth. Their tongues encircled each other, and both blondes let out a throaty moan. Ino wrapped her arms around his neck and threw her leg over his lap, straddling him and pressing her chest and body firmly against him. Naruto wrapped his arms around her waist and drew her close, encasing her in his embrace. Ino could feel the love coursing through them, feelings that had been bottled up for so long by both of them now being released. It was pure bliss, and she couldn't remember ever being happier. Flashback concludes. Or now, when she was so unhappy. Ino recalled when she ended her relationship with Naruto 6 months later. The blank expression on his face was the same one she had seen when he opened the hospital door to Sasuke's room. When Shikamaru came by, Ino remembered how she started explaining to Naruto why she was breaking up with him. Naruto had noticed the nervous exchange between the Nara heir and Ino. But before she could finish her sentence, Naruto took Ino's hand and placed it in Shikamaru's. A brief flash of pain flashed through his eyes, but he was soon walking away into the night in deathly silence, as if that look of betrayal had never existed. Ino had done exactly what she had promised him she would never do. Will he ever forgive her for doing to him what she swore she would never do? All she could do was hope. But what if he still despises me? The rest of the night was spent in silence. As Nell's eyes finally closed, Naruto let out a hearty sigh. She seems like a good girl, Naruto-kun, Yoruichi observed as the blonde Jinchuriki looked down lovingly at his dozing surrogate daughter. He nodded, tenderly running his hand through the child's hair before commenting. An impulsive one, too. She reminds me of myself at that age. I apologize for my earlier reaction to her, but you must understand that previous encounters between a Shinigami and an Arrancar have been, shall we say, difficult. Naruto turned around to question her statement when he noticed Yoruichi had finally put on some clothes, albeit a racy black bra with a matching G-string. You know I don't trust you. As she rounded the bed and stood before him, the tan goddess allowed her lower lip to tremble in a mild pout. Naruto stood up before the woman in front of him and was about to say something when her lips again captured his, but this time Naruto pushed her away and enjoyed the look of shock on her face before sternly saying, I'm not sure what's going on in your devious mind, but let me explain something to you. For the previous 2 years, I had sworn off the idea of giving or receiving love from anyone. But what happened a few days ago? Yoruichi inquired. Again, he looked down at the sleeping little green-haired girl and said, Yes, that little girl lying before you and the 2 women you met earlier have made me doubt that. Naruto then glared angrily at Yoruichi before declaring in a firm tone. And, while I'm still trying to reconcile my feelings for them, I know they're important to me. I will not do anything that will harm them. So don't think you can swat your tongue down my throat and I'll fall madly in love with you and forget about them. Do you follow what I'm saying? Yoruichi gave a nod. I understand, Naruto-kun. I'll have to earn your love. And, if necessary. Instead of kissing him, she hugged him tightly. Instead of shoving her, he stunned her. Then I don't mind sharing you either, Yoruichi said, releasing him and leaning down to kiss Nell on the forehead. Yoruichi finally made her way out of the bedroom, her hips swaying seductively as she walked. The Neko woman, however, turned around before leaving and said, Rest up, Naruto-kun, Captain Yamamoto, and the rest of us will tell you everything about the Shinigami and Arrancar war in the morning. Naruto simply sat down next to his sleeping daughter and leaned forward, his face in his hands in resignation. And he began to wonder how he had gained a daughter and 3 women in the span of a few days, all vying for his love and affection? Something he had willingly given up a long time ago. Heaving a sigh and accepting that he wouldn't be able to sort out his feelings about anything or anyone tonight. Naruto lay on his side next to Nell, a protective and loving arm across her sleeping body as he drifted off into what he hoped would be a peaceful slumber. When Naruto awoke the next morning, he discovered that Nell had left him. He walked out into Yamamoto's main room, slowly rising from his bed to investigate. When he entered the room, he saw Hinata get up from a table where the former head captain, Shunsui, Yoruichi, and Yugito were seated. Naruto stood there watching as Hinata went to get Nell, who was playing with some toys in the corner of the room. When Naruto called out to the Hyuga girl, he was taken aback by the look of deep hurt on Hinata's face when their gazes met. Hinata bent down to pick up Nell without saying anything, and the 2 of them exited the room silently. Confounded by what had just happened, the blonde Jinchuriki returned his attention to the table, where he noticed Shunsui and Yamamoto each trying to control a nosebleed, Yoruichi wearing a wicked grin, and Yugito glaring daggers at Naruto. What is going on, and why is Hinata-chan upset? Oh, not much, Naruto, we've just been sitting here while Yoruichi has been telling us how you passed the second trial. In intimate detail, I might add, Yugito replied, her voice cool and biting. When Naruto heard this, he visibly winced and shot Yoruichi a heated glare, but she simply shrugged her shoulders and said, They inquired. Naruto cursed and turned to leave the room to find Hinata and make sure she was okay, as well as try to explain what she had heard about the trial from Yoruichi. If he could? Naruto could hear water splashing and Nell giggling from down the corridor as he stepped into it. Naruto found himself in a quaint little onsen with Hinata standing by watching over Nell as she splashed around happily in the water after walking down and entering the room where the sounds were coming from. Enough with the games, Nell-chan. Use that soap and get nice and clean. Alright, Hina-chan. Naruto approached Hinata and inquired. Can we talk, Hinata-chan? Hinata jumped a little when he heard Naruto's voice, but he didn't turn around to face him and answered in a flat tone of voice. We have nothing to say about Naruto-kun. Great, she's mad at me, damn that Yoruichi. Naruto thought bitterly to himself. Please, I can tell you're upset. Won't you at least talk to me? Hinata sighed and told Nell that she and Naruto-kun were going to talk and that she'd be back in a few minutes to make sure the little Arrancar was spotless. Nell nodded and went back to playing and splashing around in the onsen. As Naruto began to speak, Hinata followed him into the hallway and closed the door behind her. I know you're upset with me because of what happened during my second trial with Yoruichi, Hinata-chan. I'm not angry or upset with you, Naruto-kun, Hinata said, bowing her head and refusing to look Naruto in the eyes. I can tell you're upset and angry with me. I'm sorry about the second trial. I'm not sure what Yoruichi told you, but I passed the trial. And I never slept with her. You almost did, Hinata murmured quietly, but Naruto overheard her. You're right, I almost did, and I'm sorry you're hurt, but could you please find it in your heart to forgive me? I don't want you to be angry and upset with me, Naruto pleaded as he stepped in and attempted to hug Hinata before the Hyuga girl pushed him back into the wall and burst into tears while shouting. I told you I wasn't angry and upset with you. I'm angry and upset with myself for being angry and upset with you. Naruto looked at Hinata, bewildered and confused, before she sunk to the floor, brought her knees up to her chest, and hugged them tightly, saying in a choked voice. I'm angry at myself, not you, Naruto-kun. I don't have the right to be angry at you. Naruto knelt beside Hinata and wiped a tear away from her cheek before saying. I'm not sure what you mean, Hina-chan. I mean, what right do I have to be angry with you over what nearly happened with Yoruichi during your trial, especially after what I did to you 3 years ago by marrying Kiba? Hinata swallowed a small sob before continuing. Even if you had slept with Yoruichi, I have no right to be upset or jealous about it, and I'm angry at myself for feeling that way. The last time I felt this way was when Ino told me of her feelings for you 2.5 years ago and asked if it was okay with me for her to pursue a relationship with you, and even though I told her yes because I wanted you to be happy with someone, I still felt some anger and. When Ino's name was mentioned, Naruto stiffened and a scowl appeared on his face for a brief moment. Hinata noticed this and cupped his cheek, saying. Ino made a mistake, just like I did, Naru-kun. Please don't hate her for it. Naruto sighed deeply and took Hinata's hand in his own. I appreciate you standing up for your friend Hina-chan, but Ino didn't make a mistake. She made a decision. However, I made a decision when I married Kiba. Yes, but you made your decision out of love for and protection for your sister. Ino was not burdened by such a self-sacrificing quandary as you were. Hinata remained silent because she didn't know what to say to Naruto about her friend. The Hyuga girl's relationship with Naruto had only recently been rekindled, and the two of them were still trying to figure out how to proceed. She overheard Naruto say as he rose to his feet, bringing Hinata with him. Don't beat yourself up for being upset or jealous of my trial in Yoruichi. It shows me that you care about me. I love you, Naru-kun, Hinata said as Naruto hugged her. Well, we should go check on Nell-chan and see if she's staying out of trouble. Hinata nodded in response, and they both opened the door to the onsen and looked around the pool, but there was no sign of the little green-haired Arrancar. Concerned, they called out for her, at which point they heard Nell respond from above and looked up in horror at what they saw. Nell had climbed up 20 feet to the main support beam of the roof above the onsen, and they could hear her giggling with delight. "Watch me do a cannonball, Hina-chan and Naru-kun." Nell then jumped off the beam, causing Hinata to scream and Naruto to leap into the water and catch the little Arrancar. "Ah! Why did you have to go and do that? I was having so much fun." Nell lamented to her surrogate father. Naruto could only groan in response, wondering why Kami had chosen such a wild child to protect him. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. A short time later, after drying off and sending a pouting Nell to a room for an undeserved timeout for simply trying to have some fun, Naruto and Hinata joined the others in the main room as Yamamoto prepared to tell them about the Shinigami and Arrancar. "Listen well, young mortals, my full name is Genrisei Shigekuni Yamamoto, and seated next to me are Shunsui Kairaku and Yoruichi Shaheen. We are Shinigami, or Soul Reapers, and we govern the flow of souls between the human world and the afterlife, or I should say we did." "What do you mean you did?" Naruto inquired. "What happened to the souls after they left the human world?" Hinata inquired openly. "So you guys are death gods?" Yugito asked, surprised. "Old man Yama, why don't you let me explain everything to them?" Shunsui said to his former sensei. "HMPH, long-winded indeed. Shunsui, you may take over now." "Thank you. Now I'll answer Yugito question Chan's first. Yes, we are or were what you would call death gods. As for Hinata question, Chan's the souls we ferried from the human world went to a place we call the Soul Society, where they lived in peace until they were reincarnated back into the human world. Naruto, your question will be answered at the end of my tale." As Shunsui began, Naruto, Hinata, and Yugito nodded in agreement. Now, Oyama here founded the Shino Academy, which trained the Shinigamis about 1,700 years ago, and personally instructed myself and my best friend Jishiro Yukitaki, as his first students, to become captains in the Gotei 13 of the Soul Society. Now the Gotei 13's main duty was to defend the Soul Society's capital city, the Seireitei, and the adjoining 320 districts of the Rukongai. Before continuing, Shunsui paused to take a deep breath. Hollows are a race of creatures born from human souls who, for various reasons, do not cross over to Soul Society after death and stay in the human world for too long. They are corrupt spirits with supernatural powers that devour the souls of both living and deceased humans. Before Shunsui continued on, the three former Gotei 13 captains exchanged a grim expression. SSK Aizen was a former captain of the Gotei 13's 5th Division. He orchestrated the destruction of the Soul Society with his followers, two other Gotei 13 captains Jin Ichimaru and Kanami Tusen, by escaping to Hueco Mundo, the dimension where Hollows and Arrancar reside, which lies between the world of the living and the Soul Society, but can cross over to the human world and Soul Society. Naruto's head snapped up to attention when he heard the word Arrancar, and his thoughts immediately turned to Nell. The blonde Jinchuriki wanted to stop Shunsui right there and ask some questions, but she decided to wait and listen to the story. Before fleeing to Hueco Mundo, Aizen had managed to steal the Hogyoku, which had been developed by another captain in the Gotei 13 Kazuki Urahara. The Hogyoku is a device that possesses the ability to transform a Shinigami into a perfect hollow Shinigami hybrid, as well as the ability to evolve certain hollows into Arrancars, which Aizen waged war with against the Soul Society using it. Wait a minute, are you trying to tell me Nell-chan is one of this Aizen guy's soldiers and you all fought against her? That's bullshit, she just seems like a little girl to me. Naruto couldn't keep his mouth shut any longer. No, Naruto, Nell did not fight in the Shingami, Arrancar war. I'm not sure what happened to her, but she was kicked out of the Arrancar army before the war began. Please, Naru-kun. Let Shunsui-san finish as promised before we ask any questions, Hinata asked softly, attempting to calm Naruto. Naruto grumbled angrily before nodding his head to Shunsui. There's really not much more to the story. The Shinigami Arrancar War began, and both sides suffered heavy casualties. Finally, in a climactic showdown between the remaining Shinigami and Arrancar, both sides released all of their powers simultaneously at one another, and the war was over in one fell swoop. Shunsui then sat back down at the table, and after a few minutes of silence, Naruto realized that was the end of the story and inquired, perplexed. I'm confused. If you guys won the war, why aren't you living at the Soul Society instead of here in the human world? I never said we were going to win the war, Naruto. So it was the Arrancar who won? Hinata asked, perplexed. I never said anything like that. Then what are you saying? When did this damn war happen in the first place? Yugito grumbled. The Shinigami Arrancar War occurred 400 years. In the future, Yamamoto replied calmly before taking another sip of tea. What? Said Naruto, Hinata, and Yugito in unison. It's true, the war won't happen for another 400 years or so. You see, when the Shinigami and the Arrancar unleashed all of our powers at once on each other, the resulting explosion ripped a hole through the fabric of time, space, and dimensions, resulting in all of the remaining Shinigami being flung throughout the history of time into the human world. And the old man, myself, and Yoruichi-chan were each thrown into. I'm not sure how many more Arrancar were thrown into this time period, but I can tell you there's one less, Naruto stated openly. What exactly do you mean? Shunsui inquired. I mean, I finished off one of these Arrancar bastards a few days ago when he was trying to kill Nel-chan. He was ranting about how he needed to kill her to gain her powers, but I didn't think anything of it at the time. He was already pretty busted up by the time I found him, probably by one of you Shinigami during the war before I finally finished the job on him. Little Nell does have great power, young Naruto, but it is dormant, so I warn you, be on your guard, because her immense power could manifest again without warning, Yamamoto warned the young Jinchuriki. Well, if there are more Arrancar around, I'm glad Yoruichi is here to add her strength and skills to a fight instead of just me and the old man. Yoruichi nodded and smiled at her fellow former Gotei 13 member. I don't understand, you both seemed surprised when you saw each other yesterday, why is that? Hinata inquired deftly. That's because I was surprised to see Yuru-chan. I thought Oyama and I were the only ones thrown into this time period until yesterday, Shunsui explained. I thought it was just me and the geezer. Why didn't you tell us about each other, you old coot? Because knowing both of you and your overdriven libidos, you two would have willed away the centuries humping around like rabbits, instead of conducting yourselves as honored members of the Gotei 13 and accomplishing something worthwhile, such as participating in the trials to find potential new Shinigami candidates for the future. Both Yoruichi and Shunsui looked at each other, wanting to refute what their captain commander had just said, but after a moment, both of them shrugged their shoulders, realizing he was probably correct about the two. Yamamoto then spoke again. However, I'm very pleased that the two of you have chosen to add your powers and skills to help Naruto on his quest against these Akatsuki. From what he and Yugito have told me about them, they appear to be every bit the threat to this time period that the Arrancar were to us in the future, so the two of you have my highest praise in doing so. Yoruichi and Shunsui both nodded towards their captain commander, though they wouldn't admit it. Hearing Yamamoto's approval of their decision to assist Naruto filled them with pride. The next morning, as Naruto and his traveling companions packed their belongings to leave, they bid farewell to Yamamoto, who had knelt to give Nell a gift. Ah, little one, I've got a gift for you. The girl advanced, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. A present. What is it? What is it? This. Exclaimed the wise man, revealing a large leather sack that appeared out of nowhere, its top bound by a loose knot. As the knot unraveled, little fingers began to work quickly on it. Yada. The contents were soon revealed to be a bag of candy, which caused the child to practically squeal with delight, her eyes widening at the sight of the sugary treats. "Thank you, Yama-ji," she chirped, giving the aging sage a big hug at his legs before skipping back up to Naruto, giggling happily on her surrogate father's shoulder. While his surrogate daughter was already digging into her early morning desserts, said Shinobi approached the elder. "Are you certain, Yamamoto-san, that you want to stay here?" "I am certain." Naruto made a rare show of gratitude by bowing. "Arigato sensei for the assistance and guidance you've provided to me and my people over the last few days." "Ho!" exclaimed the elderly man in response. "I haven't been called that in a long time." Shunsui and Yoruichi each bowed to their former captain commander and set out on their journey to meet the Crimson Blade's leader. As he trudged behind everyone else in Naruto's party, the unofficial liaison between Naruto and the bandits was deep in thought. "What the hell have you gotten yourself into, Daisuke? This is the strangest group of people I've ever met in my life." After a brief pause, he began to scan the people he was traveling with. "We have a blonde swordsman with the power of the devil himself. A little green-haired girl who, while appearing innocent, gives me the strange impression she's hiding something." He had to be careful not to lose his mind by staring too long at the women ahead of him. "Aside from those two, we have 3 incredibly hot women, all of whom have eyes only for the leader of this motley crew, and finally a lazy straw hat-wearing sword-wielding pervert." Swallowing nervously, he averted his gaze as Hinata's head turned in his direction. "In fact, I'm pretty sure any of them could kill me easily if they wanted to." This was the source of the most concern for Daisuke. He was one of the Crimson Blade Bandits' most powerful members, and any of them could easily kill him. "What makes Naruto Uzumaki want to join us?" Daisuke shivered slightly as he remembered Naruto slaughtering his comrades in an instant while they haggled over the split of booty they had stolen from the bandits who had murdered a traveling caravan. Daisuke was disgusted that his comrades had disobeyed their leader's orders to kill their robbery victims. He was, however, powerless to stop them because he was only one man against many. Daisuke remembered Naruto being powerful, skilled, and ruthless when he dispatched his comrades. And now this blonde-haired demon of a man was even stronger than before? It just didn't make sense. What makes him want to be a bandit? This guy and his friends are so strong they could take over a small village if they wanted to, the Crimson Blade Bandit mused silently before his name was called. "Daisuke, hurry up and get up here. I want to talk to you about your organization." As he spoke, Naruto looked over his shoulder, his smoldering eyes flashing red briefly and frightening the bandit. "I know they're good at killing innocent road users, but I know very little else about them." He motioned for Daisuke to come forward. "I want you to tell me everything there is to know about being a Crimson Blade bandit." The bandit was uneasy because of Naruto's tone and the way he said this request, as if it was silently saying to him, "If you tell me everything you know, you might live to see another day." "Hi Naruto-sama, I'll tell you everything I know," Daisuke replied quickly as he raced to catch up to the blonde Jinchuriki. While Naruto was listening to the history of the Crimson Blade Bandits being told to him, a crimson-eyed beauty thousands of miles away was slowly waking up from a peaceful night's sleep. Kurenai was perplexed as she stirred. Why was her pillow thumping softly in her ear? She blushed slightly as she realized she had turned over at some point during the night, as her head now rested comfortably on Kakashi's well-toned chest, and her leg and arm were draped across his body. Kurenai smiled as he looked up at Kakashi's still sleeping face. If he was still sleeping, a few more minutes of sleep for herself wouldn't hurt, as she was currently quite comfortable. Except for Kakashi's kunai, which was poking her in the leg. Kurenai reached down inside the sleeping bag, still half asleep, to remove the vexing weapon. Why would Kakashi keep a kunai in his sleeping bag all the way down here, and why would he wrap it in cloth? Kurenai thought absently as she grabbed the rather large offending weapon and tried to pull it free. However, no matter how hard Kurenai yanked, the weapon refused to budge. Kurenai finally found an opening flap to what she assumed was the kunai's cloth holster and reached inside after groping around. Kurenai then heard Kakashi's trembling voice inquire. "What are you up to, Kurenai?" "I'm trying to get rid of this damn kunai that's poking me, Kakashi," Kurenai replied groggily, her hand wrapping around the object she mentioned. That's a kunai, Kurenai," Kakashi stammered, his teeth clenched. Kurenai's brain registered the sensation of the object in her hand at that moment, because a kunai did not feel warm or pulsate. The scream that ripped through the forest seemed to echo for miles about a second later. Kurenai was frantically pacing around the campsite as the scream faded, while Kakashi was nursing a lump to his head delivered by his agitated Junin companion as she flew out of the sleeping bag. Kakashi asked angrily, rubbing the lump on his head and groaning in frustration. "What was the point of that?" Kurenai paused his pacing and glared angrily at the silver-haired Junin. "I told you last night that you'd pay for anything perverted." "Please excuse me. I did nothing perverted." He gave her a sharp glare and added, "Remember, it wasn't my hand in someone's pants, but yours." Kurenai flushed bright red at this statement, before shakily pointing to Kakashi's lower half and stammering in defense. How do you explain that?" Kakashi looked down to see what Kurenai was talking about, then quickly covered up and said, "Oh, that would have been there whether or not you were in the sleeping bag. You had nothing to do with it." Kurenai's face developed a tick mark as an indignant expression spread across it. When Kakashi saw this expression, he quickly tried to comfort the now insulted and angry Kunoichi in front of him by saying, I didn't mean you couldn't cause that, Kurenai. I mean someone as beautiful as you could easily cause such a reaction. Just ask any male over the age of 12 in the village, ha, ha, ha. Oh, I wish I hadn't said that last part. Kakashi reflected as he slapped his hand against his face before peering out between his fingers to look at Kurenai. Kurenai's body stiffened upon hearing Kakashi's statement. She pondered what to do next in silence. Kakashi noticed this and sighed, thinking to himself. I'm a dead man, he says. Kurenai, on the other hand, simply growled through clenched teeth before growling out, saving the copy Nin from death. Let us never talk about what happened here again. I'm going to get some firewood. Junin Kunoichi, with his dark hair, then stomped off into the woods. Kakashi exhaled a sigh of relief and thought to himself as he watched Kurenai storm off into the forest. I'm not sure why she didn't kill me, but thank you, Kami. But there is one thing I must say. She has a fantastic ass. Kurenai, too, exhaled a sigh of relief when she got a sufficient distance away from the campsite, unbeknownst to Kakashi. Kurenai hadn't killed Kakashi for what he said because, as she reasoned, her attention had been drawn to the middle of his statement rather than the end. He thinks I'm lovely. Kurenai then stated with amusement while staring at her hand with a mild blush on her face. Well, it's possible it wasn't the weapon I thought it was. The next part was said so quietly that no one could hear it. But it's the most powerful weapon I've ever seen or felt in my life. The smell of brewing coffee woke Ino up several miles away from the Konoha Junin. She awoke tiredly from her sleeping bag to see Sasuke brewing a pot over a small fire. When Sasuke noticed the blonde Kunoichi was awake, he poured her a cup and handed it to her. Taking a sip to clear her mind, Ino grumbled angrily and spat out the brown liquid. Your coffee is disgusting, Sasuke. Yes, but it will wake you up, Ino. Why are we waking up so early? We only had a few hours of sleep after defeating Sakura and Kiba. Can't we sleep a little longer? No, Ino, we can't. Time is of the essence. I know we worked hard last night to put some distance between us and Sakura and Muttboy, but we have to get moving and find Naruto now. However, why Sasuke? Sasuke cast a quick glance at Ino's eyes before turning his head to the side and saying, "Because today is the last day of the 2 weeks Tsunade gave me to find Naruto and return him to the Leaf Village, and if I don't do it today, I'm supposed to carry out his elimination." You mean his murder, don't you, Sasuke? Ino sneered. Uchiha, who was brooding, said nothing in response. After a while, wanting to change the subject, he inquired of Ino. You know, Ino, I understand meeting Sakura out here. I figure she's looking for Naruto just like us, but why is Kiba out here? The blonde's face was filled with perplexity. How did she end up with him? I've been thinking about it as well. She sat back on her thighs. I'm not sure how they met, maybe the same way we did and they decided to work together to find Naruto like us. But why is Kiba on the lookout for Naruto? I don't believe he's Sasuke. I believe he's looking for someone else. Who? Hinata, Ino said quietly. Hinata, is she also out here looking for him? Ino, why is she out here? You idiot, for the same reason I am. She simply figured it out faster than I did and left a few days before me to look for Naruto. She has never stopped loving Naruto and continues to do so today. Sasuke just stared at Ino, bemused, before snickering, which quickly turned into hearty laughter, which surprised the blonde-haired Kunoichi, as the normally stoic Uchiha rarely laughed or smiled about much of anything. Ino couldn't take it anymore after a minute of hearing Sasuke laugh aloud. What's so funny, Sasuke? He managed to speak in between chuckles. I'm sorry, Ino. I swear I'm not laughing at you. I was just remembering how you and Sakura wouldn't give Naruto the time of day, or if you did, it was to beat the crap out of him, and Hinata was too shy to even say hello to him. He gave a low whistle, astounded by it. Now, a few short years later, the Dobi is using a stick to fight off the 3 prettiest girls in our class. Do not refer to Naruto as a Dobi. And don't mix Hinata with me or Sakura. We were too busy chasing after an emo traitor to the village to notice what a wonderful guy Naruto was back then. Ino lashed out in rage. Ino saw this and immediately felt guilty about what she had just said, as Sasuke's face returned to its normal stony appearance and he looked to the ground in silence. She said in a contrite and soft voice, taking a deep breath and then exhaling. I apologize, Sasuke. I didn't mean to say that. I lost my cool because you called Naruto a Dobi, and it brought back memories of how Sakura and I treated Naruto that I'd rather forget. Her next words were quite accurate. If you're going to call someone a Dobi, it should be Sakura and me for treating him that way. Certainly not Hinata, who has always recognized Naruto uniqueness. Cons. With a sigh of regret, Sasuke stated. It's fine, Ino. I understand. He paused to survey the horizon. I did betray the village, and I'll have to live with that for the rest of my life. I apologize for referring to Naruto as a Dobi. I didn't mean it in an insulting way. It's just something we do between the two of us. A mental image of his comrade and himself from their youth appeared in his mind. I'm the Dobi, and he's the Teme. Yeah, I never got that between the two of you. Sasuke gave her a deadpan expression. It's a male thing, Ino. Whatever, Ino said, rolling her eyes, as she and Sasuke repacked their belongings to continue their search for Naruto. Sakura and Kiba regained consciousness late in the morning, and their mood was not good. Kiba's rage could be heard throughout the woods after he freed Akamaru from the pit he was trapped in. I swear I'm going to tear the guy who sucker punched me limb from limb when I find him. His clawed hands raked at the empty air, imagining his prey. I'm sure it was Naruto, that jerk. Sakura glared at Kiba for his remark for a moment before Akamaru began barking to his Inuzuka partner. After a few minutes, Kiba growled in annoyance and began walking back to their campsite, which Sakura quickly followed behind and asked. What exactly did Akamaru say, Kiba? According to Akamaru, it wasn't Naruto who ambushed us, but two other people. One of them appears to have used jutsu to take over Akamaru and led us into that trap. They used a jutsu that sounds like Ino Pig's family jutsu to take over Akamaru. As she thought, a small gasp escaped her throat. Oh no, don't tell me that blonde-haired bitch is also looking for Naruto. Does Akamaru know, or did he see who attacked us, Kiba? The Inuzuka shook his head, shaking himself out of his rage. No, they used something to mask their scent, but he did say that the two figures who jumped over the pit were dressed in Anbu masks and clothing, explains the author. That's it. Ino Pig is in the Anbu, but I'm curious who her partner is. Sakura was trying to solve the mystery silently when she realized that if it was Ino, she couldn't let her find Naruto before she did. The Inuzuka heir and his canine were whirling around Sakura. Whoever they were, they took a long time to find Naruto and Hinata. We must act immediately. Kiba nodded in agreement, and the two of them immediately began packing up their supplies to resume their search. When Naruto and his companions arrived at the top of a hill overlooking the Crimson Blades encampment, the sun was setting. The camp was made up of various tents of various sizes. However, in the center was a large tent with guards stationed all around it. Obviously, this was the mysterious leader's headquarters that Daisuke had told Naruto about. Several people were milling around the encampment, including several women and children who were either doing chores or playing. Naruto had learned from Daisuke that several members of the organization, including himself, had wives and children who accompanied them as the bandits traversed various lands and countries, never staying in one place for too long. Naruto silently considered as he surveyed the camp. So these are the infamous Crimson Blades, huh? They're not much, but they're better than I expected. The majority of the chakra signatures I'm sensing are Chunin rank. Some, like Daisuke, could be upgraded from upper-level Chunin to low-level Junin with some training. However, I sense a couple of very strong signatures coming from that central main tent. At the very least, one of them would be considered an upper-level Junin. There appear to be between 125 and 150 signatures, excluding women and children, which should be sufficient to complete the task. Naruto-sama, we should get going because the leader expressed a strong interest in meeting you and does not like to be kept waiting, Daisuke said politely to the blonde Jinchuriki. The blonde's demeanor changed slightly as she nodded. Yes, let's not keep him waiting any longer. I, too, want to meet him, especially after what you've told me on our journey here, Naruto said coldly, taking Nell from Yoruichi. To his chagrin, Nell had spent the day being carried by the Neko woman due to the child's insistence on spending time with the newest potential wifey Chan for Naruto. Naruto and the others descended the hill, carrying the young girl on their shoulders, towards the Crimson Blades encampment. Naruto and company entered the bandit camp and made their way to the center of it. It was clear that word of what Naruto had done a few days before had spread like wildfire throughout the camp. Out of apprehension and fear of these newcomers, many of the women were herding their children into tents. Many of the men simply turned away or glared at Naruto and his companions. However, a woman carrying a small child not much younger than Nell ran up to them and cried out. Daisuke-kun! Haruko-chan! Ayame-chan! Daisuke asked with love and care as he hugged and kissed both his wife and child. I've missed you, my sweet Ayame. How have you and Haruko been since I left? Yes, Daisuke, my love, we've been fine. Sakari has been sniffing around now and then, but we've been fine. Sakari. Daisuke yelled angrily. Ayame lightly kissed his cheek. Don't think about it. Sakari wouldn't dare to try anything because he knows the leader would kill him without hesitation if he did. I suppose, but I think I'm going to have to kill that bastard one of these days. Daisuke spat, before Naruto's cough brought him back to the present moment. He heard Naruto ask while lifting his mask as he looked over to the large blonde-haired warrior. Are you planning to introduce us to Daisuke-san? Forgive me, Naruto-sama, this is my wife Ayame and my little girl Haruko, and please allow me to introduce Naruto Uzumaki. Before saying anything, Naruto made a small bow to the young woman and her child. Ah yes, Ayame-san, Daisuke and I have talked about you on a few occasions during our travels. Daisuke gulped nervously and resolved to get Naruto as far away from his wife and child as possible. He kissed his wife and child again before rushing Ayame and his daughter into a tent before returning to Naruto and saying, Please excuse the delay, Naruto-sama. We should get to that meeting with the leader right away. You will not meet the leader because where you are right now is where you will all die. Sakari declared confidently as a dozen bandits surrounded Naruto and his party with swords drawn. Naruto turned to face the man who had threatened them and remembered it was the bandit he had punished a few days before for his arrogant attitude toward him. Naruto commented with malevolence, letting out a robust yet ominous laugh. I see you still haven't learned your lesson, worm. 2 days ago I was merciful, now I'm tired, and you're keeping me from my meeting. I hope all of you are prepared to die, because I'm not going to hold back my blade this time. However, before Naruto could put Nell down and draw his Zanpakuto, Yoruichi had stepped in front of him and requested, much to the annoyance of both Hinata and Yugito. Please let me deal with this riffraff, Naru-kun. Naruto paused for a moment before nodding his head in agreement. Yoruichi then vanished in a flash of light, only to reappear a few seconds later, holding a blade to Sakari's throat, as 12 heads rolled off the bodies surrounding Naruto and his companions. Just as Yoruichi was about to dispatch Sakari in the same manner, a voice thundered out from behind her, and everyone turned around to see a mysterious massive figure walking towards them, wrapped in a dark robe and wearing a mask. Everyone around them dropped to their knees in reverence, except Naruto and his party, as well as Sakari, who was still on the losing end of Yoruichi's Zanpakuto. When the foreboding leader reached Naruto, he spoke in a distorted voice through his mask and asked, What's going on, Daisuke? I was expecting you to bring this man and his companions to me right away. Why are they still here, and why are a dozen headless bodies littering my camp? The warrior spoke, glaring at the sniveling man. I apologize, Leader Sama. I tried to follow your orders, but Sakari Teme over there decided to attack this man and his friends. Much to their detriment, as you can see, Leader Sama. Daisuke replied with a smirk, looking over at the now enraged Sakari. Before saying anything, the Crimson Blade leader turned towards Naruto and gave a small bow. Please accept my apologies. I did not invite you here for such a reception. I just wanted to meet the man I'd heard so much about in whispers. It's not your fault, Leader San. I'm sure it's difficult to keep worms like that wretch over there under control. I accept your apologies, Naruto said, returning a respectful bow. Thank you, Naruto-san. Speaking of worms, please let me handle this one. Sakari, go to your tent and stay there until I come up with an appropriate punishment for your transgression here tonight. And if I were you, I'd spend the night praying to Kami that by the time I dealt you, you'd be gone. Sakari gave a brief bow to everyone before scurrying off into the camp as Yoruichi sheathed her Zanpakuto, while Naruto and his party followed the bandit leader to the main tent and went inside. A large black crow flew into the tent and perched on the leader's shoulder as he sat in a large ornately decorated chair. Naruto, who still had Nell on his shoulder, smirked slightly as he motioned for the others to move to the side and face the Crimson Blade leader. The bandit leader broke the ice and asked after the two men stared at each other for a minute. "I see you want to join the Crimson Blade bandits." "No, I don't," Naruto replied calmly, causing most people to look up in surprise. Before asking, the bandit leader cocked his head in curiosity. "Why are you here if you don't want to join my organization?" "Well, the truth is that I need a small army of fighters to accompany me to Spring Country. But it can't just be any army, because I need skilled fighters to help me battle a small but powerful group of missing nins who are currently waiting for me there." He smirked as he looked around the camp. "And seeing as I'm a missing nin myself, small armies aren't something I can just go down to the local village and acquire." Naruto sighed and shrugged. "I figured your gang of bandits would be enough to get the job done." The leader looked at Naruto silently for about a minute before asking calmly, "And what makes you think I'd lead my men into Spring Country just to assist you?" Naruto's grin had turned feral. "Oh, you probably wouldn't, which is why you can't lead any longer." Then Naruto drew his blade but kept it sealed, allowing the massive guillotine-like blade to crash to the ground beneath it. He's not going to pull out his ace that easily. "From what I've heard from Daisuke-san, anyone can challenge you for the leadership of the Crimson Blade bandits through a battle with you." Naruto then asked, hefting his Zanpakuto onto his shoulder with practiced ease. "If I can force you to submit or simply kill you, then the gang's leadership automatically falls to me, right?" "Yes, quite correct," the Crimson Blade leader replied curtly, his gaze fixed on Daisuke, who was about to wet himself over what had just happened. He returned his attention to Naruto and stated authoritatively, "In the morning, we'll fight for the leadership of the Crimson Blade bandits. Until then, I invite you and your guests to dine with me this evening and rest until the morning." Cold, dark eyes gleamed at him. "Is that okay with you, Naruto-san?" The blonde re-strapped his sword, buckling the clasp that held it in place. "That is very kind of you, Leader-san. We accept. However, I do have one small request." "What exactly is it?" "If you could, please remove the henge Leader-san. I'd like to know who I'm fighting in the morning, not this bogus image." "Very good, no one has ever seen through my henge before. I hope you and especially your friends like surprises." Smirked the Crimson Blade leader as he stood up and his body's image began to fade. An instant later, a large muscular man with prominent cheekbones and hairless brow ridges emerged. The man had a single visible green eye on his left cheek, while his right eye was covered by an eye patch. The hulking man also wore his hair in long, stringy strands with small bells attached to the tips. The most noticeable feature of the man's appearance was a long thin scar running down the left side of his face. His outfit was a sleeveless captain's haori with a ragged appearance. Finally, the crow was revealed to be a small girl with short shoulder-length pink hair and dark pink eyes, as well as a perpetual blush on her cheeks. She was still sitting on the large man's shoulder, swinging her little legs back and forth in contentment. Naruto was distracted for a moment by the girl's pink hair, but the blonde Jinchuriki quickly returned his attention to the man standing before him. The man's size was so massive that he made Naruto look small in comparison. While they both smiled and waved to each other, the little girl appeared to be no older than Nell. Suddenly, two voices, one from Shunsui and the other from Yoruichi, rang out in shock and surprise. "I don't think so. It's not possible." The enormous man chuckled. "Oh, but Yoruichi and Shunsui," he announced, bowing slightly before the two former Shinigami and sweeping his arm in front of himself in an overly dramatic manner. "At your service, the one and only Zaraki Kenpachi." He then turned to face the visitor on his shoulder and said, "And you too remember my first lieutenant Yachiru Kusajishi, this ball of energy." "Hi. Shun-kun. Hi. Yuru-chan." Yachiru greeted with a squeal. Naruto had to admit that he was impressed by the feast that had been prepared. He had expected a few hunks of meat here and there, perhaps a turkey or two, but the banquet before him was anything but ordinary, with delicious food of all varieties visible at many tables, some of which even had satin tablecloths. Kenpachi, on the other hand, scowled as he looked at the elaborate setup of fanciness, the bandit's attire being the only exception to the rule. As he openly grumbled in annoyance, Kenpachi silently wondered if the man who prepared and organized this banquet would have been better served in life as an interior decorator or party planner rather than a shinigami. Yumachika, ba. Daisuke slapped himself on the forehead, mimicking his leader's frustration, because he, too, did not appreciate the cleanliness of the environment. "He's always trying to make us look decent," Daisuke thought to himself as he looked across the tent at the effeminate man in charge of organizing this banquet and all that it entailed. However, if Daisuke had known the true origin of the man he was staring at, he would have been much more cautious about expressing his disdain for the man. Yumachika Iyasagawa was the 5th seated officer in the 11th Division of the Gotei 13 under Captain Kenpachi, whom he still serves, before becoming a high-ranking member of the Crimson Blade Bandits. The former Shinigami continued to wear the standard Shiakush uniform, but with some modifications. An orange piece of clothing sits around his neck on top of his uniform, covering most of his chest that would otherwise be exposed by his uniform. This is linked to an orange sleeve on his right arm beneath the uniform's much looser-fitting sleeve. Yumachika has colorful feathers on his right eyelashes and brow, as well as shiny skin, purple eyes, and jaw-length black hair, which, when combined with the feathers, gives him a feminine appearance. Before joining the Gotei 13, he wore a simple kimono with a flowery pattern and no feathers on his eyes. Yumachika wore his hair down his back in a loose ponytail, with shoulder-length pieces framing his face. Yoruichi sighed as she saw all the food neatly laid out in front of them, then looked down at herself. "I feel so unprepared." Yugito bit her tongue to keep from sarcastically remarking that the Neko's clothes barely dressed her. Naruto gave his fellow Jinchuriki a look that said it all. "Don't." "And who do we have here?" Yumachika inquired. "You look like a girl, are you a girl?" Nell inquired, his eyes widening. Yumachika scowled at them both, and Yachiru burst out laughing. "How rude!" exclaimed the effeminate bandit and former Gotei 13 officer to the young girls, before feeling a small wave of killing intent directed his way by Naruto and Kenpachi. Yumachika spotted Yoruichi and looked appalled at her tattered clothing before announcing with disgust, clearing his throat and quickly moving away from Nell and Yachiru. "No, no, no. You cannot wear rags like these to a feast. Come with me, Yoruichi-sama, I have a dress that will make you look absolutely stunning for dining this evening." Yoruichi puzzledly looked at him and opened her mouth to protest before pausing. "Wait a minute." She kept her face expressionless, but now she had an idea. She had promised Naruto that she would earn his love. Dressing up wouldn't hurt her in any case, and it might even help her get Naruto's attention over her rival. As a result, Yoruichi agreed to be escorted away, but not before giving a sly grin to a now fuming Nibi container and one agitated Hyuga heiress. Both Hinata and Yugito then asked if they could be excused to get more properly dressed. Kenpachi agreed and asked Daisuke to accompany the two ladies to his wife Ayame's tent, as she was the best dressmaker in the camp and would most likely have something for them to wear. Daisuke eventually returned to the tent, but without Hinata and Yugito. Naruto, who had been conversing with Kenpachi during their absence, turned to Daisuke and asked the bandit, his voice slightly concerned and irritated. "Where are Hinata-chan and Yugito-chan, Daisuke?" Yes, they're waiting outside and wanted to surprise you," Daisuke said before walking to the front of the tent and pulling the flap aside. "Please allow me to introduce Ms. Yugito Ni and Ms. Hinata Hyuga for your viewing pleasure, Naruto-sama." Yugito and Hinata then entered the tent and took every male present's breath away. Yugito was dressed in a fiery red halter evening gown with a plunging neckline and a draped cummerbund effect. The long flowing sarong-style skirt popped open at the left thigh, revealing her long and supple leg. Meanwhile, the plunging neckline revealed a lot of cleavage from the ample chest of the Nibi container. The fiery red color of the entire outfit contrasted beautifully with Yugito's blonde hair, giving the young woman a sultry hot sex appeal. It was all Naruto could do to keep a blood geyser from erupting in his nose. When his gaze was drawn to what Hinata was wearing, he nearly lost control. Hinata opted for a more traditional kimono-styled mini-dress in lavender, which matched her eyes perfectly. The dress had a low V-neck style that showed a lot of cleavage, as if it had been painted on Hinata's body to show off all her womanly curves. The gold and silver metallic foil print graphic flowers placed on the sleeve and mid-dress to hemline which stopped at mid-thigh showing off both of Hinata's long and toned legs were the final touch to the dress. Overall, the ensemble gave Hinata a look that combined innocence and sexiness into one sensuous package. Naruto's gaze darted between the women like he was watching a tennis match. When Hinata noticed him staring at her, she reverted to her younger self and blushed furiously in his presence. Not the blush, which makes her look so damn cute and hot. "I swear to Kami, it's my one damn weakness when it comes to her," Naruto thought to himself as he pinched his nose to prevent a flood of blood from rushing out. Naruto's thoughts were interrupted by Kenpachi leaning over and whispering into his ear. "You might be the luckiest man alive." Yoruichi then entered the tent with style and said, "Ta-da." Yoruichi stood there, but he had been completely transformed. She used to be hot. But she was absolutely stunning now. Her tattered rags had vanished, and in their place was a lovely black gown. It was long and flowing, reaching past her knees. A single strap wrapped around her neck, as it and Yoruichi's ample assets appeared to be the only things holding the dress together. The fabric was cut out on the sides, revealing her hips' tanned, smooth, and flawless skin. Long gloved sleeves exposed her fingers and ended at her elbows, revealing her strong shoulders and part of her chest, which the dress oddly did not strain against, as it had been custom-made for someone with her proportions. The obi that had held back her hair was no longer there, allowing her rich hair to cascade down over the open back of her dress, exposing her creamy chocolate skin. But, unlike Hinata and Yugito, she had refused high heels, and Naruto was amused to see that she was still wearing her previous sandals. Yoruichi's lips twitched upwards in a smile as she noticed Naruto's expression of amazement. Yoruichi's smile quickly turned to a frown as she got a good look at both Hinata and Yugito as they walked over to stand beside Naruto. As much as Yoruichi hated to admit it, both women looked as stunning as she did, much to her chagrin. Kenpachi leaned in again and whispered to the Jinchuriki. "Now I know you're the luckiest man on the planet, because you're not going to find 3 hotter babes to warm your bed at night than these." Naruto's head was darting back and forth between all 3 of the women surrounding him, so he barely registered his host's words. Kenpachi then stood up and walked over to a large and long dining table, taking the seat at the far end, before motioning for Naruto and his friends to do the same. Naruto sat in the center, with Hinata to his right and Yugito to his left, having stolen the seat just seconds before Yoruichi could. Shunsui chose to stand rather than get caught up in what was about to happen. Yoruichi frowned at Yugito, but instead took a seat next to the Nibi vessel after giving her a nasty glare in return. "Bitch," murmured the female Jinchuriki. "Yugito," Naruto said coldly, drawing her attention to him. "Be nice," growled the Kyuubi vessel, with malice in his tone. He couldn't stand it if his allies argued, especially while he was sitting right next to them. Yoruichi, wisely, did not take advantage of her situation and instead leaned back in her chair. Nell's eyes sparkled as she beheld the meal before her, blissfully unaware of the potential three-way catfight that was brewing. "Wow, look at all that food." Yachiru laughed from her perch atop Kenpachi's shoulder, then leapt down with grace and surprising agility for someone her age. Yumi-chan doesn't do this very often, but when he does, he makes some really sweet treats. "We'll have some later, but for now, do you want to play?" That piqued Nell's interest, and she gave her father a pleading look, complete with a puppy dog pout. "Can I go play with Yachiru-chan, Naru-kun?" "You may go play, but please stay close." Before the little Arrancar complained, the blonde Jinchuriki lightly patted her head. "Don't jiggle my crown, Naru-kun." Naruto smiled as he watched Nell run off to play with Yachiru. Hinata dressed the little Arrancar in a cute blue and green patterned dress with ruffled sleeves and flower accents to add detail to the hem, which hit just above the knee. While Nell liked the dress, she was completely smitten by a sparkling costume jewelry tiara crown, which she now proudly wore on her head to cover her broken Arrancar mask. Naruto was surprised by the warm feeling he felt inside as he watched Nell run around with Yachiru with delight. "You big softy," snickered Kyuubi inside Naruto's head. "Shut up, you filthy fox." Inside his head, Naruto retorted angrily. Nell and Yachiru, on the other hand, declared each other best friends forever after a minute or two of giggling and chatting. They were running around the servers and waiters in a game of tag, clearly having the time of their lives as they caused havoc among the dinner guests. Kenpachi burst out laughing as they bowled over a bald man named Akatsuki Madara. "That Nellil of yours, isn't she a handful?" "I suspect no more than Yachiru," Naruto replied with a grin. Kenpachi grinned. True, I suppose I'm going to have to go out one of these days and find Yachiru a mother or at least a female who is strong enough to help calm her down." Back in the Soul Society, it wasn't a problem because there were several females she could look up to and who were powerful enough to keep her in check if needed, but pickings are slim here in the human world, ha. Naruto just rolled his eyes at the Crimson Leader's statement before looking around at the three women and silently wondering. But what if? Despite himself, Naruto chuckled as he looked up and saw both little girls darting around the large tent, each being it for about 10 seconds before the other caught up and the chase began again. Nell appears to be an ideal match for her. In the leader's eyes, a strange light glinted. "I'm curious who is stronger, Yachiru or Nell. They both have great power, even if it's dormant in both of them right now." Something about Zaraki's smile made Naruto uneasy. It was too wild and bloodthirsty. Naruto carefully chose his next words, but they were true. "I'd have to say Yachiru is the most powerful, given that she served as your first lieutenant." Owie. Ow. Owie. The tent was suddenly filled with a sharp cry of pain. Looking towards the cry, Naruto noticed Yachiru sitting on the ground, holding her arm, tears welling up in her bright eyes. "Yachiru!" Zaraki yelled as he and Naruto dashed over to the two young girls. "Yachiru, what happened?" "Oh Kenny, I ran into this table by accident and knocked over this pot of hot soup, and it burned my arm. It really hurts, Kenny." "I can fix it, Yachiru-chan, and take away your pain," Nell declared. Before anyone could intervene, The little Arankar stuck her hand into her mouth and began massaging her uvula before vomiting onto Yachiru's injured arm, the vomit itself resembling saliva. What the hell happened? Naruto and a few others exclaimed together. However, Naruto was taken aback as he watched the severe burn wound fade away, and after a minute, Yachiru jumped up and yelled. "Thank you, Nel-chan. It no longer hurts." The wound was healed in an instant. The missing Leaf Nin's jaw dropped. How did you do it?" Kenpachi burst out laughing before proclaiming. "She's an Arankar, idiots." Yumachika hissed and Akaku frowned as both former Gote 13 officers yelled and drew their Zanpakuto. Impossible. They were all murdered. How could this child? Naruto appeared in front of the two former Squad 11 officers in a yellow flash, drawing his own Zanpakuto and exuding a massive amount of killing intent before growling out in a deadly tone of voice. "I'm guessing you two idiots are like your leader and my two companions, so I'll let this one slide. For now. But if either of you draws your blades again towards that little girl, I guarantee you'll both feel pain like you've never felt before you die. Akaku and Yumachika, you two are embarrassing me. Look at her. Does she really appear to be such a threat that you two idiots felt the need to panic and draw your weapons?" Kenpachi scolded his former officers angrily. "Please accept our apologies, Commander Zaraki. We were simply caught off guard and acted in haste. Don't do it again, because if you'd harmed my friend, Kenny would have been the least of your worries." Yachiru's threat made Akaku and Yumachika both pale. Naruto gave Nel, who had just been glommed by Yachiru, a big hug in thanks for taking care of her injury, but the two were up to their antics again seconds later, and everyone sat back down. The rest of the dinner went relatively smoothly, but Naruto had no idea what was in store for him. After dinner, both Yachiru and Nel persuaded Hinata to play hide-and-seek with them throughout the camp, and the little girls were always amazed at how quickly Hinata would always find them thanks to her Byakugan, and once the girls were found, they were always treated to a tickle attack from the Hyuga heiress that left them squealing in delight and laughter. Naruto then turned to see Yoruichi slamming glasses of ale with Kenpachi and Shunsui, reminiscing about the good old days. While Naruto was watching Yoruichi interact with Kenpachi, he had a sneaky thought. Perhaps I can pawn her off on Kenpachi or Shunsui. However, his train of thought was interrupted when he noticed Yugito sitting alone in a tent corner, looking despondent. The blonde realized he hadn't spent nearly enough time with her as he had hoped. He rose quickly to make his way over to his fellow Jinchuriki. "Are you okay, Yugito-chan?" The sound of Naruto's voice jolted Yugito out of her trance, and she stammered out a response. Naruto-kun. I'm fine, Naruto-san, I'm fine. Are you having a bad time? No, it's not that. I'm just not a fan of fancy dinners or parties. I was never invited to such events as a child, and what has happened in recent years as a result of. So, I'm not sure how to act around them. Naruto only had to reflect on his own childhood experiences to understand and sympathize with the Nibi container. He smiled as he pulled her from her chair, reaching down to grasp her hand, which caused Yugito to blush slightly. Let's take a long walk, shall we? Naruto felt completely at ease as he and a still blushing Yugito walked hand in hand through the bandit encampment. After all, they shared many similarities in their lives. And, while many of their experiences had not been pleasant, it felt strangely good to know that another person could truly understand what each of them had gone through as children. However, Naruto's ease quickly gave way to irritation as he noticed some of the looks people were giving the two of them as they walked along. Many of the looks they had received when they first arrived were fearful and apprehensive, but now many of the men were casting lustful leering stares at his female companion. This didn't sit well with Naruto. Absolutely not. The malevolent red-eyed glare and killing intent he returned quickly caused the men to flee in terror. Naruto inquired as the pair of Jinchuriki approached Yugito's tent. "Yugito-chan, are you sure you don't want to go back to the party?" "I'm sure, Naruto-kun, I'm tired and would like to rest." "Unless you want to join me?" Yugito responded in a seductive whisper to Naruto's ear. A stunned Naruto began to stammer a response when his mask was suddenly lifted and his mouth was covered by the Nibi vessel's own as she proceeded to give Naruto a passionate kiss. After a brief moment, Naruto encircled Yugito and drew her close to his body, while she ran her fingers through his hair. After a minute, Naruto pushed his Jinchuriki companion away with an odd expression on his face. "I'm sorry, Yugito-chan. I won't be able to do this right now." She let out a small sigh. "It's fine, Naruto-kun. I just wanted you to know that I have feelings for you, but if you don't have feelings for me..." "I comprehend," Yugito responded softly, her pain evident in her voice. Naruto could feel Yugito's pain and wrapped her in a tight hug, whispering into her ear, before she could pull away. "No, you don't get, Yugito-chan. I have feelings for you, but there are other things I need to think about." "If by other things you mean Hinata, then everything is fine, Naruto-kun," Yugito replied softly. "Huh?" Naruto stated perplexingly. Yugito looked up, saw Naruto's puzzled expression, and giggled slightly before saying, "I know you adore Hinata, and she adores you, but Naruto-kun and I have spoken. And if you truly love that person, she doesn't mind sharing you with them." "Did Hinata say that?" Naruto, clearly surprised, inquired before adding, "Wait, I didn't think you two liked each other? When did you two have this conversation?" The slim Nibi vessel rolled her shoulders. "I'll admit, Naruto-kun, I didn't like Hinata at first, but that was more due to jealousy than anything else. I can see why you like Hinata so much after getting to know her. She's very easy to like. And, to answer your question about when we talked, it was during your banquet trials, when we were both worried sick about you." Naruto stood there trying to take it all in before looking at Yugito and softly saying, "Yugito-chan, I'm glad you told me about your feelings, and I do have feelings for both you and Hinata. But I'll tell you what I told her, I need time. You must understand that I had given up on romantic feelings for the past 2 years. As a result, it's difficult for me to find them again with anyone." Yugito simply bowed before Naruto lifted her chin to look at him and said softly, "However, if you give me time, Yugito-chan, I believe I can grow to love you as much as I do Hinata-chan." Yugito smiled before rising and placing a small kiss on Naruto's lips before saying, "That would be fantastic, Naruto-kun." Naruto smiled as he watched Yugito enter her tent, before she said with seduction over her shoulder, "I'll be there whenever you are, Naruto-kun, and Hinata and I are looking forward to all the fun the three of us can have together." Yugito then shut the flap to her tent, leaving Naruto desperately attempting to pinch off his nose as images of a very naked Hinata and Yugito doing various things to each other were being flooded into his brain by a certain fox demon who was currently cackling in his cage. Naruto sighed as he looked up into the night, the party having ended several hours before. He and Kenpachi had discovered this clearing several miles away from the bandit encampment, and Naruto had agreed with the bandit leader that this was where they would meet for battle the next day. The two combatants chose this location for safety reasons, knowing that the powers they would unleash together would be enormous. And neither fighter wanted their fight to harm anyone else. Naruto had stayed behind after Kenpachi had returned to camp to train a little bit, and as a red light faded from his form, it was clear that his skin was badly burned, but also healing at an incredible rate. It took some time, but he was finally learning to control the fourth-tailed form. "Enough for tonight," Naruto said as he strapped Zangetsu to his back. "Oh, Naruto-kun." When he heard the voice, Naruto noticed something out of the corner of his eye and turned to look, arching his brow in confusion. Yoruichi, naked, stood before him in all her glory, hands on her hips and a seductive pout on her face. As he silently thought, Naruto pinched his nose in frustration and in response to the woman standing before him. "Damn it, Hinata, Yugito, and now this, Kami, what are you doing to me?" The moonlight seemed to dance on Yoruichi's exposed smooth, tanned, and exquisite skin as Naruto gazed upon her. His skin ached to be touched. "Shut up, Kyuubi," says one. "I didn't say anything, Kit." "This is all yours, young man." The fox demon was amused to see his host becoming so attracted to a woman he had previously expressed a strong dislike for. "Stop staring at me, and do something." Naruto sighed and averted his gaze. "Yoruichi, what do you want?" She let out a small sigh. "Oh, come on. I dress up for you tonight at dinner, parade out here in my best suit, my birthday suit, and you ask me what I want." "Yoruichi, we've discussed it. More than a costume or your birthday suit will be required to make me fall in love with you." The Neko woman let out an exasperated hiss. "For the sake of Kami." "So, what will it take?" He looked her in the eyes. "Do you really want to find out?" "Time. I require time." "Are you serious?" You and her suck face whenever she wants despite the fact that she didn't do anything. Nobody ever talked about Hinata in that way. A low growl rose from his throat, cutting her off. It was the sound of an animal, not a man, as his eyes glowed red, pupils becoming silted behind his mask. A mask that was now being pulled upwards with a sharp tug, revealing the deep scowl set into his chiseled features. She heard a scratching sound and looked down to see Naruto's fingernails growing into rather sharp claws. "First and foremost, never again refer to Hinata in such a way, or you will live to regret it, I promise." He then thrust a serrated digit at the Neko woman. "Second, I kiss Hinata because I love her and have done so for the majority of my life, no matter how hard I try to deny it. So please don't ever denigrate Hinata and my love for one another in such an insulting way with me again." Yoruichi gulped nervously, as each word he spoke was tinged with rage. The Neko woman realized she needed to be careful here, lest he become violent again, and quietly said, "I apologize, Naruto-kun. I just don't see what she has that I don't." "You're curious about what she has, Yoruichi-san?" "Yes." She mumbled in hushed tones, wincing at Naruto's use of the formal suffix to address her. Despite his rage, Naruto said 4 simple words: generosity, loyalty, and love. Yoruichi blinked in perplexity before demanding a more detailed explanation. "I need a better response than that." "Fine," Naruto yelled. "Growing up in my village was a living hell for me. All I ever got from people were cruel acts or expressions of disrespect and hatred. Hinata-chan was the only person who treated me with kindness, respect, and even love back then, even though I was too stupid to notice, and I still resent myself for not noticing her feelings." Red emitted from the seal. "I ignored Hinata because I was too busy chasing after a girl I had spent my entire life in love with and who I foolishly believed loved me back, but it was Hinata who helped bring me back to life after the girl I did love and was about to marry betrayed me by having an affair with my best friend. Hinata helped me overcome that pain, and she didn't do it for selfish reasons like the hope of gaining me as a boyfriend, she did it because she truly cares. Only one tale. Unfortunately, we were forced to part 3 years ago by outside forces over which we had no control, and it nearly destroyed me. After that, I began to change. I became cold, distant, and withdrawn from the people around me. I began to care nothing about myself, or the people I once cared for, including Hinata. However, before I spiraled completely into the abyss, another friend was there for me to help bring me back from the brink of despair. There are two tales. But when that relationship ended in pain for me, I vowed never again. I shut down my emotions and welcomed the darkness in my life, and I completely changed from the man I once was into an unfeeling bastard no one could even recognize anymore. I either shunned or lashed out at everyone I once cared about and who cared about me, and for the last 2 years I've lived my life devoid of any feelings or emotions, because they only brag. The ground was trembling after 3 tales. Naruto noticed this and, after taking a deep breath to calm himself, banished the chakra. However, despite what I've become over the last 2 years, Hinata still came looking for me, and she still loves me. He gave her a hard stare. Does that suffice as an answer for you? Naruto stomped his way back into the bandit encampment and to his tent, still fuming from his encounter with Yoruichi. All Naruto wanted to do now was sleep and forget about the Neko woman for now. Naruto also hoped that Yachiru wouldn't be as fussy as usual, as she slept as usual. When Naruto pulled aside the flap to enter his tent, he was greeted with such a sight that his rage at Yoruichi vanished in the face of the beauty before him. Hinata was soundly asleep, lying on her side on top of Naruto's sleeping bag, her arms protectively wrapped around Nell. Naruto looked over to his adoptive daughter and noticed she was also sleeping, snuggled up into Hinata and tightly hugging Hyuga Eris. Naruto noticed a half-opened children's book next to them and deduced what had occurred. Nell had apparently cajoled Hinata into reading her a bedtime story, during which they both fell asleep. The game of hide and seek had undoubtedly taken a physical toll on both of them. As his breath caught in his throat, Naruto returned his gaze to Hinata and noticed she was still dressed in her kimono mini-dress. Naruto observed the moonlight filtering into the tent glittering off Hinata's face, chest, and legs, while adding luster to Hinata's flawless porcelain skin, making her even more beautiful, if that was even possible. Naruto realized he should probably wake Hinata and accompany her back to her tent. But by doing so, Nell would undoubtedly awaken from the process, and Naruto did not want to deal with his daughter's fussiness and stubbornness in returning to sleep. Naruto simply didn't have the time because his fight with Kenpachi was only a few hours away and he needed to rest. This is what Naruto justified to himself for allowing the 2 women to sleep. Never mind that Naruto simply didn't have the heart to interfere with such a pleasing and beautiful sight in front of his eyes. Leaning forward, he kissed Nell's forehead before turning to kiss Hinata's lips softly and chastely. Naruto then took a spooning position behind Hinata and draped his arm over both of them. Hinata murmured, "Naruto-kun," in her sleep as a result of this action, which brought a small smile to his face as he rested his chin on her shoulder and drifted off to sleep as well. Kenpachi arrived quietly in the clearing he and Naruto had chosen the night before, a little after dawn. Yachiru sat on his shoulder as usual, but her trademark smile was missing this time. Instead, the little girl appeared concerned. Naruto and his party arrived a few minutes later, with Nell perched on his shoulder and Naruto holding hands with both Hinata and Yugito as they approached. Shunsui and Yoruichi, who seemed to be staring at the 2 young women currently in Naruto's company, trailed behind them. Naruto and Kenpachi both nodded and ordered everyone to take a position quite far away to watch the battle, as the 2 of them did not want anyone else to be hurt in their fight. Of course, both Yachiru and Nell screamed and protested the most as they were dragged away from their respective fathers to watch the fight from afar. Kenpachi silently pondered as he watched Naruto unsheath his Zanpakuto from his back. I want to see what he's truly capable of before I go all in. Alright, let's go. Naruto exclaimed, jolting the bandit leader out of his reverie. Kenpachi chuckled and sounded solemn as well. He spoke solemnly, indicating his eye patch. Alright, kid, let's see if you're good enough to make me remove this. Do you mean an eye patch? With one hand, Naruto held his sealed blade. Fine, I'll just take your other eye. Then, in a whirlwind of leaves, he was simply lost in the midst of it all. Naruto's voice echoed all around Kenpachi at the same time, mimicking what Zabuza had said on his very first ranked mission. My, there are so many vitals. Which one should I strike? He appeared next to the man and swung Zangetsu at his head as he said this. Kenpachi simply caught the blade with his hand, despite the fact that the earth shook beneath the strike, making everyone, including Yoruichi, wince. Zaraki then yanked Naruto off his feet and lunged at him in midair, clearly intending to impale him, despite the cut he had received. When Naruto noticed this, he pushed off the blade with his feet and spun in the air before delivering a vicious kick to the man's face. Take it. He smirked as his Zaraki's head snapped back from the blow. His taunt, however, was fleeting. When did Kenpachi begin to laugh? He was, indeed, and when he lowered his head, he showed no signs of injury, other than a small scorch mark on his right cheek. Is that all you've got? The blonde could only blink before the mountain of a man swooped down on him. Kenpachi's leg lashed out, catching the Jinchuriki in the gut, and the air wheezed out of him. Everyone was taken aback when they saw Naruto's face, or rather his eyes, which reflected intense pain. Naruto was as taken aback by the sheer power of the kick as they were, if not more so, as it drove him into a tree, which splintered behind him before collapsing. Only for him to grab it with one hand and nudge it away. He smirked as he stood up. You weren't kidding. I had better stop withholding or I'm... He turned around, hoping to resume the fight, but the spiky-haired man had vanished. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he looked around frantically. Where has he gone? I can't seem to find him. The hairs on the back of his neck suddenly bristled. He felt compelled to look up. It's a good thing he did. Kenpachi was hovering above him, his sword poised to strike him in the head. Crap. Naruto was able to bring up Zangetsu in time to block him, but the force of the impact nearly knocked him to the ground. His eyes narrowed as he gripped the hilt with one hand and the flat of his blade with the other. He was gradually pushed down. Zaraki clearly outweighed him in terms of strength. Alright, that's it. It's time to take things seriously. He knocked Kenpachi's sword hand up, giving him just enough time to roll to the side and escape before the jagged blade split the earth beneath him. Kenpachi was giggling like a maniac, his voice tinged with delight as his target's spin propelled him upright and back on his feet. Nice. It's been a while since I've had to work for a win. Naruto grinned as he thrust the giant cleaver in front of him, then placed his hand on the tip of the guillotine sword. It instantly turned a bright blue, as did his eyes. Good, I don't want to let you down. Yugito swallowed nervously, even from a distance, as the ground began to tremble. Oh no. Hinata softly pleaded with both hands clasped to her chest. Naruto-kun, please be cautious. Yoruichi simply smirked. Alright, here we go. Naruto abruptly drew his hand away from the blade. Yell. Zangetsu. A wave of blue power swept past Zaraki, slicing a wide swath into the earth. When the storm had passed, Naruto slung Zangetsu over his shoulder, the cloth from its hilt swaying in the breeze created by his power. "I'm serious this time." Kenpachi jumped to his feet, eager to carry on. Naruto popped his joints and shook his head. "There we are." He still spoke in a psychotic, distorted voice, but Kenpachi noticed that Naruto's chakra power had tripled, and he appeared calm. Kenpachi was preoccupied with wondering what Naruto had done when the teen appeared behind him. "Come on, let's keep going." "Gladly," exclaimed the leader as he launched an offensive. Naruto sighed as Kenpachi appeared behind him and swung at his head again. Naruto simply blocked with his sword hand while forming a wave of black chakra on Zangetsu with his other hand. Tenshou Getsuga. Kenpachi had barely raised his sword in front of him when Naruto swung Zangetsu toward him, knocking him backwards. Naruto then appeared above the still-flying bandit leader and slammed into Kenpachi's feet, knocking him to the ground. Kenpachi grimaced and spat blood as he was thrown to the ground by Naruto's impact. Nonetheless, he rose. "Wow, Naruto, that actually hurt." His chakra then grew even stronger. Kenpachi chuckled, which quickly turned into insane laughter. "This is fantastic. I've never had so much fun." He reached up and grabbed his eye patch with one hand. "With you, I believe I can fight at full strength." Naruto smirked. "Whoa, full power?" Zaraki clutched it tightly, his grin almost demonic. "Prepare yourself," Zaraki yelled, ripping his eye patch off his face. The outcome was immediate. His chakra soared past Naruto's like a hurricane had been unleashed. Yellow chakra blazed around Kenpachi, who had an insane grin on his face, as his chakra was like a violent storm, lashing out and shredding everything in its path. "How do you like fighting me at full power, brat?" Naruto paled, but he raised his blade and braced himself for the onslaught that was about to come. "Bring it on. Show me what you're capable of. Don't expect to win that easily, kid." As soon as he finished speaking, a hail of kunai began to fall from the sky, heading in his direction. All but one of the projectiles were deflected or dodged by the man, and Kenpachi let out a grunt of pain as the weapon slid into the flesh of his thigh. He quickly yanked out the kunai and chuckled as he turned his gaze to Naruto. "That's a good move, kid. However, you will require more." The two of them blurred forward, their blades colliding, and Kenpachi noticed that, despite barely holding him off with one blade, Naruto still had a free hand. Naruto smirked, his palm literally buzzing with chakra. Hinata's pale eyes widened as the energy took on a distinct shape before she yelled. "Get down, everyone." Naruto smirked viciously. Time seemed to slow as his hand moved forward. Rasen Shuriken. The attack struck Kenpachi in the chest, and the dome of chakra spread outwards, killing both of them. Dust and dirt billowed around the clearing, and when it all settled, both combatants were present. They were both completely unharmed, save for a few scorch marks on their clothes. They took a breather before resuming the war. Kenpachi did the only thing he could as the black blade descended. He headbutted Naruto in the face and rolled away, holding his bleeding leg as he rolled to his feet. For the time being, he needed to regroup and tend to his injury before their battle could resume. As he rose to his feet, he noticed a swarm of blonde hair approaching him and sighed. "This kid isn't going to let me off the hook." All of the Narutos came to a halt as the real one approached. He shook his head as he looked at Kenpachi's injury. "Look after that before you bleed to death." Kenpachi immediately ripped off his sleeve and bandaged the wound. Naruto and his clones smiled, and Kenpachi noticed that they all held Zangetsu in their hands. Ready? We are here. They all moved in unison. Kenpachi snarled and made hand gestures. Ninja technique. Hidden mist jutsu. Suddenly, the area was blanketed in dense fog, blinding Naruto, who realized he had lost over half of his shadow clones after hearing several poofs. He took a deep breath and concentrated. Calm down. All I need to do is focus my chakra and spread it out. The blue chakra surrounded Naruto, and he forced it away from him with a grunt of effort, dispelling the mist. He looked around, seeing Kenpachi finish the last of his clones before facing him. There you are. He blurred forward, and Naruto felt his fist hit his skull, but just before he flew, he swung his blade forward twice, leaving a bloody X slashed across Kenpachi's chest. Naruto flew back, but this time he spun in midair and bounced off a tree. With his momentum, he shot at Kenpachi like a missile. Holding Zangetsu in front of him, he twisted his form and began to spin before shooting forward, ready to skewer his target. Kenpachi brought his sword up to block, but Naruto struck Kenpachi's sword hand aside at the last second. He thudded past him, the blade embedded in the ground, with no time to spare. Got ya. He sprang away from its massive form, a Rasengan already whirling in his hand, having used his Zanpakuto as a literal springboard. He aimed for his chest, but Kenpachi easily sidestepped him, his chiseled features reflecting his disappointment. That won't work a second time. Everyone winced in anticipation as he grabbed Naruto's arm and slammed him face first into the soil with an earth-shaking quake. He waited for a moment, but when no response came from the warrior's limp form, he lowered his blade. Hinata hid her face behind her hands, but at the last second, she noticed him. Poof. The clone vanished into smoke, just as he had done during the Chunin exams. Naruto had struck. He erupted from the loosened terrain, not wasting a second, and dealt Kenpachi possibly the hardest blow of his life, one that would have broken the neck of any ordinary man. They were both thrown into the air by the strike. Hinata wrung her hands in fear as she watched the two fighters fly into the air. While exposing bandages on his arms, Naruto flapped his wrists, lashing out to shove Zaraki upward. Then he twisted and lashed out with a kick that pushed him to the ground while knocking Zaraki even higher. Naruto landed in a crouch and untied the scroll's binding. He bit his thumb and drew a bloody line down it. As everyone gasped at the transformation, a red aura shimmered around him, pain exploded in his body, but power came with it, and he gritted his teeth. Infected art. But he jumped. Kaioken. He was behind Kenpachi in less than a second. Naruto wrapped his arms around the man, and when that wasn't enough, the bandages around his wrists snaked around them both. This one came from Bushy Brow. As Naruto spun, their ascent came to a halt and quickly turned into a descent. The earth screamed to meet them. Lotus Primary. Naruto wrapped himself in the Kyuubi's cloak at the last second, and three tails surrounded him as the fox struggled to keep its bloodlust at bay. The two exploded into the dirt. Naruto immediately flung himself off Kenpachi and limped out of the hole in the ground. He was in pain because the technique had taken its toll on him. Hinata desperately wanted to run to him after witnessing Naruto's struggle to stand. Why did you use that move, Naruto-kun? Kenpachi got out of the small crater as well, but he was limping now. Yachiru took a nervous swallow. Ken-chan. Oi. As his former first officer took a step forward, Zaraki scowled darkly. Don't even consider Yachiru. I'm not going to let you help me. It's a one-on-one battle between me and him. The same is true for you, Nell. As his daughter's eyes began to water, Naruto snapped, perhaps more forcefully than he should have. As tears streamed down her cheeks, pain flashed across his face, and he felt like scum. He couldn't bear it if the worst happened, and those were his final words to her. He made the universal time out gesture with his hands. Hold on there. Then he dashed over to his daughter, scooping her up in his arms and clutching her tightly. Nell-chan. Huh? The child sneezed. He took a deep breath and patted her on the back of the head. I didn't mean to yell at you. I adore you. Her eyes widened. Then she gave him her all in a hug. Nellil adores Naru-kun as well. He put her down, tickled her under the chin, and marched back out to the field. He did, after all, have a heart. He drew Zangetsu from the earth, then let Zaraki do the same with his own blade. Where were we before? They charged as one, steel flying through the air as they struck, hard and low. Then it became a strength contest, with Kenpachi pushing down and Naruto pushing up. He lashed out at the youth face in another headbutt, seeing that this was going nowhere, but Naruto responded in kind, his face contorted with effort. Crack. Both warriors staggered back, giving Naruto enough time to avoid the downward slash that split the earth in two. Naruto landed a few feet away, breathing heavily, while Kenpachi appeared as fresh as a daisy. The blonde sighed, closed his eyes, and pulled the mask over his face. I suppose it's either all or nothing. As red chakra gathered around him, Kyubifying his body up to 3 tails, he smirked. Kenpachi Zaraki, brace yourself. Naruto's chakra has now skyrocketed as well. He took a stance and stared at Kenpachi. This caught the man off guard. Naruto, it appears that your strength has returned. Tell me how you did it. Naruto fixed his gaze on him, emotionless. Sorry. There isn't time to explain. Kenpachi was aware of his disappearance. He was on his way. He had only just raised his blade to block when Naruto appeared in front of him and slammed his black sword into Kenpachi's, driving the man's blade back until it was inches from his face. He's putting in more effort. They paused for a moment, but Naruto clearly had the upper hand once more. Tenshou Getsuga. Kenpachi's pupils dilated. The red chakra slammed into him, but it was too late. Kenpachi was covered in blood and breathing raggedly when it cleared. Then he noticed Naruto on the other side of the field, and blue chakra mixed with his red. Kenpachi laughed, releasing all of his chakra. This next one will be decisive. Naruto cast a glance behind him at Zangetsu. Naruto, are you ready? The blonde laughed. I'm prepared. Zangetsu smiled and looked down at the young man. This young man will go far in this world. Naruto exclaimed as pure blue light flooded through him, his sensei's voice ringing in his ears. Alright, Gaki, take his power and show your sensei who is the most powerful here today. Ero Sennin? But he received no response. But he recognized the voice of his former mentor from anywhere. Even in death, master and apprentice had just spoken. Alright, then. Naruto nodded, feeling power coursing through his veins. You better keep an eye on this, sensei. Kenpachi's power flared to the point where it shredded his long black sleeves. Now, Kenpachi. Get ready, kid, I'm coming. As Naruto pushed himself to his limit, a blue fox mask roared above him. I'm at my limit in terms of holding your body together. As Kenpachi summoned all of his energy, a cackling yellow skull appeared above him. "We're going out with a bang," Zangetsu said solemnly. They took a single step forward, slowly at first, then faster, faster, faster. They sped towards each other like lightning, Naruto glowing with blue and red energy and Kenpachi glowing yellow. Their run quickly became a sprint, as each opposing force was determined to reach their destination first. As they got closer, time seemed to slow down. They drew their blades back, grinning wickedly. That's it. They all roared together. They slammed their weapons together. Steel collided with steel. Blue and yellow collided. As the two titans collided head-on, there was a massive explosion.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.